How's it going, everybody? Jack here from Manelli Studio Entertainment, here to bring you another video. This time we're going to talk about one of, if not my favorite comic book creator, artist, writer. This man does it all. Visionary filmmaker, Mr. Frank Miller. Now, I first heard about Frank Miller probably about 20 years ago. About 20 years ago, maybe a little less, 18 years ago, with the film Daredevil. The Ben Affleck Daredevil. And I know that film gets a bad rap, but that director's cut is actually pretty decent. If you haven't checked out the Daredevil Ben Affleck director's cut, you should check that out. And then later, I found out about him with his work on Batman. Specifically, probably the first work of his I've ever read was All-Star Batman and Robin. That's right, I was buying these in issues. I had the first 6 of these in issues. But if you know anything about this series, it took forever to come out and it never finished. So I had those first 5 issues for years and years and years and years. And this is written by Frank Miller and drawn by Mr. Jim Lee. And I don't know how old I was. I think I was like 12, right? And I knew who Frank was. I knew his work, Dark Knight Returns, year 1. So I knew this was a big deal. This is around the same time Paul Dini was writing Detective and Grant Morrison was writing Batman. I wasn't reading that yet, but I also got the Dini issues, had a handful of those. But I had no idea what I was reading. The artwork was really good. Jim Lee, draws very, seductive images, and when I was a kid, this looked really good, but again, I didn't get it, right? It took me a long time to get Frank Miller. So this was my introduction to Frank, and it didn't really do it for me. The next thing I would have read was year 1. Batman year 1. And I read this in issues, and I'll tell you guys, it was tough reading the issues because it was, it wasn't in perfect condition. So like the handwriting, the lettering was very difficult. It was cursive. I think I was 14 when I read it, and I didn't really like it, right? I didn't really care for it, and it took me a couple more reads to really appreciate this book, and now Frank Miller is one of my favorite writers after this. Now, and this is probably the greatest 4 issues of anything, right? And when I'm reading a new comic book run and they're saying, oh, it needs all these issues to do something, I'm like, well, Frank did it in 4. Frank and Mazzucchelli did it in 4. So I love Batman year 1 now. So that's kind of like my history with the writer, right? Now he's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, artists and writers in the game. And that love kind of started when I picked up this Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. So Miller draws most of this book, but then he kind of leaves just to write and does layouts besides the last issue in this. And everybody, this is, again, one of the greatest comic book runs of all time. This introduces Elektra. That's his first issue, is introducing Elektra. It solidifies the relationship with Bullseye and Daredevil. It makes Kingpin a Daredevil villain. And then, again, that final issue in this book breathtaking. Breathtaking. I don't even want to spoil it if you haven't read it before. One of the best issues of ever. The hand, like so much of Marvel's mythology starts in this book. Stick, right? I love this book so much. Matt Murdock is such a three-dimensional character. Foggy Nelson's amazing. Elektra's amazing. Black Widow's in here. I simply love this. And what Miller also did for me, and what really elevates him to one of my favorite creators, is how his kind of taste have rub off on me, specifically with film noir. And we'll talk more about film noir later, but like hard-boiled film noir, like his second written issue in this, the characters, these nerd characters, are at like a Humphrey Bogart marathon, and they're watching The Big Sleep, and they're just talking about these old noir films. And after I read that, I looked them up, I watched them, and I read the novels they're based off of, Mickey Spillane. Like I really looked into these noir, hard-boiled fiction, and it all starts with kind of Daredevil, right, for me. And I wouldn't be doing this channel because most of my stuff on here is movies, and I love talking noir and films, neo-noir. And it all starts with Frank Miller with me. It's my inception moment. And I thank Frank every day for that. And I know I'm talking about his writing, but his artwork is so beautiful. So beautiful. He starts this book as just the artist, and then he transitions to being the writer and artist. And with Klaus Janson was always the inker, I believe. And those first issues where he's just writing, artists, are just okay. They're nothing spectacular. Like, look at this. Like, just breathtaking stuff. Just breathtaking stuff. And again, going back to that Daredevil movie, if I didn't watch that Daredevil movie, I might not have gotten to this stuff, right? Because that whole film tries to adapt this book. And that's an undertaking, man. Like, to adapt this and some of Born Again and some of Man Without Fear, like, that's a very ambitious film. Very, very ambitious film. And then also with all those comic book references, Joe Quesada references, Kevin Smith is in it, right? That's a very ambitious film. But yeah, Frank Miller, Daredevil, Klaus Janson, one of my favorite comics of all time, top 10 of all time. If you haven't read it, pick it up. This is on the Disney and Marvel Unlimited. So yeah, first up of the spotlight is Frank Miller, Daredevil. So he wasn't really done with Daredevil after that. He did this one right here, Daredevil OGN. I think this is Love and War, which picks up some plot that was not finished with the first run, and it art with Bill, I can never say his Sienkiewicz. And this is amazing. I got the original graphic novel here. It's Treasury size, beautiful book. And then he came back with Daredevil, and he reinvented the character already, right? He reinvented the character with his run, and then he did it again. Again, he reinvented the character twice with Born Again. And every single Daredevil comic book has been trying to do Born Again. And again, what he did with year one in 4 issues, right? This is a great origin story in 4 issues. This is 8 stories of breaking down Daredevil to his core and then building back up in 8 issues, right? I don't want to throw shades, but like the recent Tom King Batman, it took him 85 issues to do it. And I'm not throwing shade, I like that run, but 85 issues, 8 issues, right? And this is Mazzucchelli just with, just like this. But this may be my favorite art, favorite everything. Like, beautiful. And Look at that back. You know, if you know, I'm not trying to spoil, but you know. So this is the story where the Kingpin learns that Daredevil is Matt Murdock. Drama right there. And then the struggle of Matt Murdock losing everything, right? He loses the law, he loses his home, he loses his friends, he loses everything. And how does he come back from that? That's what this story is. You know, it's not about just deconstruction. It's about how do you put the pieces back together. And that's what Miller figured out all those years ago. And no one has done it since, right? Everyone just likes to break down the pieces. You know, Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil, phenomenal, 10 out of 10, maybe better than Miller's. But the way he leaves it is like, you know, he doesn't build it back up to something new. Right? It doesn't have to be the same thing again. Like, Miller didn't want Matt Murdock to be the same thing again after this. He wanted him to be different, right? And then Brubaker afterwards. You know, again, same thing. He at least built him up and left him in a new status quo at least. But I'm not talking about those guys today. But yeah, Daredevil, Born Again, one of the best graphic novels of all time. This came out in a trilogy of books that Miller did. He did this. Year one was the tail end. And another Daredevil-related book, Elektra Assassin with Sienkiewicz again. This is about Elektra being an assassin. Crazy graphic novel, crazy artwork. This was released in the Epic line, so back in the day, so it was a little more adult. Very political book, very weird art. You might not be ready for it. But 1986, he did, like I said, year one, tail end. Wrote Born Again, Assassins came out, and The Dark Knight Return was released. Name a better comic book year for a creator. For one guy to release essentially all this. He wrote all this. Drew didn't draw these, but Mazzucchelli, Sienkiewicz, and I don't know what year Love and War came out, but yeah, this is the big boy. I got the absolute edition of this, which also comes with Batman Strikes Again, which is not as good. But this is the best way to read Returns. Okay? This is like reading it for the first time. You know, this was my original copy, right? Let's look at this. So this is that old gunslinger coming out of retirement for one last ride. That's basically what it is. It stars a 57-year-old Batman, Bruce Wayne, and he's been retired for like I don't know how long, a while. And he's finally coming back. You know, he's got a death wish. He's very hard-boiled, right? Very hard man, very stuck in his ways. He's got a death wish, but he doesn't really want to die. He wants to live. He wants to feel the excitement. This is a Batman who enjoys being Batman. He's not like dour about it. It's the mission. It's the mission. And the artwork is just phenomenal. Like, look at that. And something that's not really talked about this book is most of it is in these tiny panels, right? It's very tiny panels. And I'm not saying this doesn't look good, right? This is amazing. But look at that, right? Boom. Like, this is, again, like seeing it for the first time. It's like seeing like something in black and white that's in color now. Like, it's crazy how the absolute edition makes this book. But again, we would not know Batman as we would today without this. Yeah, you want to talk about the Denny O'Neil and the Neil Adams in the 70s? Absolutely, they saved the character back then. But at this point, 1986, you know, DC was a different company. Batman was different. If you're reading those DC Finest that I recommended a couple videos ago, you know, you can see how Batman was around this time, right? And he wasn't really, like, they're good books, but they're not making an impact, right? And it took this book to make an impact. Now, I'm going to say something, like, I love Dark Knight Returns, but it's not what I envision Batman as. He is a little too, aggressive. I picture my Batman as a more compassionate person. A compassionate person shows empathy. This guy is just all Batman all the time. All mission. And don't get me wrong, it's a great story for its universe, but my issue was how the real Batman stories try to be that, right? Instead of just trying to reinvent themselves, right? Jason Todd eventually got killed, like all that stuff, right? But that's not Miller's fault, right? Miller crafted an amazing story with maybe the greatest artwork of all time for a Batman story that changed not only Batman, but comic books in general, alongside with Watchmen. But that's another video for another day. But Frank Miller did way more than just mainstream superhero stuff. He did some indie work. Now, I don't know if I can show you the edges of these books, so I'll just show you. I have the tinier versions of Sin City. So this is the first volume. A Dang to Kill For. The Big Fat Kill. That Yellow Bastard. Family Values. Booze, Broads, and Bullets. And Hell and Back. I love these editions, but I wouldn't complain if I got a bigger version. But again, going back to the hard-boiled noir, there is nothing more poetic than Sin City when it comes to noir. Tragedy, characters. There's nothing like Sin City. And the sad thing, I don't think even Sin City reached its full potential. I wish Miller just did this for the rest of his life. And we've had like 50 volumes of Sin City. The closest thing that's ever come to Sin City would be Criminal, 100 Bullets, or anything about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, really. So yeah, those things. And this stands above everything. Want to see artwork? I gotta find something appropriate right here. Look at this. Like, breathtaking. All these are individual stories, so I'm not gonna go through everything, but this is the first one. This is about Marv. If you've seen the first Sin City movie, this is one of the main stories. Probably the best, in my opinion, maybe. That's what Mickey Rourke. Shout outs to Mickey Rourke. You're awesome. And they call it The Hard Goodbye, but it was just Sin City before. But this is his story in the introduction of Sin City. A Dang to Kill For. This is about Dwight, and he's like a good guy living in Sin City, and this is his old girlfriend, and how he's messed up and how he'll do anything for her, and he shouldn't drink booze. And that's in the second Sin City film, A Dang to Kill For. Next is The Big Fat Kill. This is in the first Sin City film. Clive Owen plays Dwight in that. And this is the sequel to A Dang to Kill For. Maybe my favorite Sin City story. Maybe. A fan favorite, That Yellow Bastard. Also in the first Sin City film, starring Bruce Willis. Shout out to Bruce Willis. And this is a great one. It's a fat one. This one adds color. Yeah, beautiful stuff. Family Values. This was released as an OGN. Again, with the Dwight character. And this one's all right. It's a quick read. It's a beautiful artwork. I'll take 50 volumes of this. And now Booze, Broads, and Bullets is a collection of short stories, but you still need to read it because it's pertinent for the last volume, Hell and Back, which this is the biggest one. It was like 13 issues, color, and sad to say, probably the weakest one. Yeah. Probably was too ambitious. It, I don't know. Like, it was about this guy. I can't remember. I think Jackie. Can't remember. And he's an assassin, and he's going after this girl with blue eyes. I can't really remember right now. I need to reread this, but it was very lukewarm. I've reread all the other ones, but this is the one I've only read like twice, but still beautiful. But he was starting to change his artwork a little already, going from less, artistic to standard, kind of. I think he just really wanted to get, and not saying some of it's not beautiful, right? But some of the stuff that is going to be in like Strikes Again, and that's not my favorite Frank Miller stuff. I forgot one. Ronin. So Ronin was what he did after Daredevil. And he went to DC, and DC gave him a blank check to do anything. So he's like, I'm going to do I don't think cyberpunk was a thing yet, but a cyberpunk samurai story about this guy that has no limbs, but psychically gets possessed by a Ronin from the past, and he has to fight a shape-shifting demon. So if you're a fan of Samurai Jack, you probably would like this. But this is, I don't know, probably his most gorgeous work. It's his most unique. Nothing else in his work looks like this. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's beautiful. It's a convoluted mess, but it's beautiful. So he also, around this time, found Lone Wolf and Cub, not just the films, but the comic book series. And that was a big, big influence on his stuff. And if you ever look at his covers of Lone Wolf and Cub, it's very similar to this artwork. So yeah, Ronin's great. Paved the way for independent creators in the big two, saying, hey, look, you don't need to just do Batman and Spider-Man. You can do stuff like this. And I got one more story. So he worked on the Wolverine comic with Chris Claremont. And again, this is the Wolverine story. Look at that. Like, this is the best Wolverine story I've read. Probably next to Old Man Logan. But I haven't read a whole lot of Wolverine, but like I read this. Frank Miller he's at top form here. Ah, man. And I think he's, he only gets credit as penciler, but he's definitely did some plot to this. Look up Chris Claremont talking about how they wrote this, right? Look it up, how they made this. But yeah, man, like Frank Miller, thank you so much, man. I doubt you're watching this, but if you're a Frank Miller fan, comment down below your favorite Frank Miller work. Again, mine's probably Sin City. The Big Fat Kill right here. Maybe my favorite of all his works. But the dude's made so much, you can say almost anything's your favorite. Daredevil, Born Again's the greatest graphic novel of all time. His Daredevil run is maybe the greatest run of all time. Frank was a guy who burned so brightly for 20 years. And then afterwards, he did Strikes Again, which is, it's all right. And then he did All-Star Batman and Robin, which I think shows how much he hates Batman. And then he did Batman Spawn, or Spawn Batman, and that's the real one to show you he hates Batman. He hates that he's super successful writing Batman, because that is the worst Batman ever. He calls Spawn punk 50 times, but Spawn's not good either, so what am I going to say? Then Holy Terror, and then his Batman Master Race, and then he did some Batman OGNs, which I got, but like they're not, like the artwork's phenomenal. Like the Golden Child or Raphael Grandpa, oh my, amazing artwork. But the story, what's happening? I don't know what's happening. But this is a spotlight. Frank Miller, you're a goat. You're a goat, You're a goat. I know people don't like you. I know it's fun to hate on Miller. I've seen some takes on this book that I definitely disagree. But you're a goat. You've changed Hollywood. You've changed comics. You've changed my life. So thank you for changing my life. And without you, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't want to do what I want to do. So thank you, Frank. This is my ode to you, my spotlight to you. If you haven't read any Frank Miller, I would suggest Sin City probably, right? Sin City. Start with Volume 1, Hard Goodbye. If not that, maybe Born Again, maybe his Daredevil. Like, you can start with this, obviously, and I know a lot of people did start with Year One, but when I read Year One, I didn't have an appreciation of it, right? It took me years to learn, not learn to love it, but to learn to appreciate it, right? To see the beauty in it. I wasn't right. I would read it and be like, what's going on? Like, but now I read it, I'm captivated. It's gorgeous. The dialogue is amazing. I see the Taxi Driver references, right? And again, my life knowledge has changed, which add to my enjoyment to that book, which gives me very, troubling when I hear like kids from the 80s like, oh, I read Year One and loved it instantly. I was like, oh, really? It took me a while. But again, same thing with this baby right here. I absolutely love this book now. But when I first read it, it was so hyped, people. Like right now, I still love the guys, but I used to watch all the time iFanboy. And this was like the biggest book those guys used to talk about. Dark Knight, Dark Knight, Dark Knight. And when I finally read it, this copy, right? I was like, that's it? Like, it's cool and all. Right? Then I read this copy again and again, and I'm like, you know what? There's something there. This book is great. The artwork is undeniable. But then when I got my hand on this bad boy, it's like reading it for the first time, right? So bigger is always better. Frank Miller, thank you so much for everything you did. Comment down below your favorite Frank Miller work, and say who else I should do a spotlight on. I don't know who I should do. I'm thinking about Paul Pope. I don't know. Comment down below who you think I should do next. Anyway, I'm Jack from Manelli Studio Entertainment. I do movie reviews, now comic book spotlight. I'm trying to do some anime stuff in the future. I also love to ramble, so subscribe if you love people rambling about stuff you like. Hit that like button to show that I know you care, and comment saying your favorite Frank Miller book. With that being said, I'm Jack from Manelli Student Entertainment saying, read more comics.